There is a moment this week in Los Angeles where a man stands in front of a live camera, in front of models, in front of an entire industry watching his family's fashion house relaunch itself, and instead of talking about the clothes, he starts talking about theft. He starts talking about betrayal, and within minutes, the internet turns him into a meme. That's not speculation. That's not a rumor pulled from some anonymous tipster. That's what reportedly happened on a live stream in real time in front of everyone. And by the end of this week, that single unraveling moment sets off a chain reaction that ends with an 80-something-year-old man getting knocked to the ground in a bar brawl he never should have been anywhere near. Welcome to Soap Pulse. I'm Anderson, and if this is your first time here, go ahead and hit subscribe because we're about to walk through one of the messiest, most emotionally loaded weeks in recent Bold and the Beautiful history, and trust me, there's a lot more going on beneath the surface than a bad interview and a bar fight. Let's set the stage, because to understand why this week hits as hard as it does, you have to understand the people involved and the wreckage they're all still walking through. Eric Forrester built Forrester Creations. It's his name on the building, his legacy stitched into every collection that's ever come down that runway. But according to reports, Eric hasn't exactly been a picture of stability lately. He's the man who insisted on going to work for a rival fashion house, Logan, before turning around and ghosting the very people who showed him kindness there, right after firing, slashing, and essentially retiring his own father figure role in his family's business. That's not a footnote. That's the emotional backstory sitting underneath everything that happens this week, and it's exactly why what unfolds on that live stream lands the way it does. Because here's what reportedly happens. Forrester Creations launches Eric's new couture collection with a full live stream event, models on the runway, press in the room, the works, and instead of letting the clothes speak, the house decides Eric will sit for a single interview. Just one. What could go wrong, right? Well, according to what's being reported, everything goes wrong. Eric starts ranting live on camera about Katie's fashion house at Logan, accusing them of thievery, framing the entire situation as some kind of corporate heist orchestrated by, in his words, this little startup going after a revered ancient fashion house. And the public reaction, according to reports, is brutal, almost instant. Clips from that interview start getting cut up and shared everywhere, turned into memes within what feels like minutes. Now, over at the Logan household, Hope and Katie are reportedly watching this entire thing unfold live, jaws on the floor, watching a respected industry figure completely lose the plot on camera, and who's right there in the room, watching the same disaster unfold with an entirely different reaction. Bill Spencer. According to reports, Bill isn't horrified, he's thrilled, he's reportedly laughing, practically gleeful, showing Katie exactly how badly this is blowing up in Forrester's face, telling her, and this is close to verbatim from what's being reported, that they've turned Eric into memes, that it's gold. One caption making the rounds allegedly reads something like, "People keep asking if he's okay," followed by a quote suggesting he was fine until someone asked. It's the kind of internet cruelty that spreads fast precisely because it's uncomfortably funny, and that discomfort is exactly the point. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is where the story stops being a simple corporate rival gets what's coming to him narrative and starts becoming something messier. Bill tells Katie that Eric brought this entirely on himself, that they're going to benefit from the publicity, that his outburst played right into their hands, and on paper, sure, that's probably true. But Katie's reaction, according to reports, isn't triumph. It's discomfort. She reportedly tells Bill that Eric's outburst made her look like a lying, backstabbing thief with no style, and that hearing those words come out of his mouth was genuinely devastating for her. Bill brushes it off, tells her it's nonsense, tells her public sentiment is on her side, that people think Eric is the one who's lost it. And maybe that's accurate. But it raises a real question that's going to hover over this entire week. Is Bill actually comforting Katie here, or is he using her pain as an excuse to keep gloating over a win? That tension between what Bill wants Katie to feel and what she's actually feeling is one of the quieter threads running underneath all the chaos, and it matters, because chaos is very much what's coming next. Because amid all of this, there's another moment that reports flag almost in passing, but that's clearly setting something up. While standing next to Bill, Will is reportedly overheard telling someone quite firmly, "Don't talk about my mother that way." Now, reports don't spell out exactly who he's addressing, but given who's in the mix this week, it's almost certainly a Forrester and probably RJ. That single line, dropped early in the week, is the kind of detail this show loves to bury early, so that by the time the real confrontation happens, you realize it was foreshadowed the whole time. And speaking of RJ, reports also note he spends part of Monday up at Forrester Creations, reportedly talking nonsense to Electra, which on its own might sound like nothing. By the end of the week, it's going to look like anything but nothing. So let's move into Tuesday, because this is where things start physically escalating and where a night that starts as ordinary turns into the kind of incident that's going to dominate Forrester family conversation for what could be weeks to come. The setting is the Bikini Bar, a fairly casual hangout, and Will is reportedly there when Electra shows up. For reasons that honestly aren't entirely clear from the reporting, Eric himself also turns up at the bar, which, according to observers, is unusual. This is a man whose typical rotation reportedly consists of pickleball, work, and quiet martinis at home with Donna, not a bar scene involving people decades younger than him. But there he is. According to reports, Will tries to get Electra to leave with him, and Eric inserts himself into the situation, telling Will flatly that he's not going anywhere with Electra. Will, reportedly fed up, tells Eric essentially to back off, using language that makes clear he's not interested in being told what to do by an older man who isn't his father. And that's when RJ reportedly steps in, and not calmly. He grabs Will aggressively, reportedly by the shirt, manhandling him, throwing out a jab about who Will thinks he's talking to. What follows is described as Will and RJ grappling with each other, a physical altercation that RJ appears to have instigated. Eric, trying to play peacemaker, reportedly tries to get between the two of them, telling them both to stop. And this is the moment that changes everything. Because in the middle of trying to break up a fight he didn't start, Eric reportedly gets hit. Now here's where the story gets genuinely complicated, and where the "who's really at fault" question becomes impossible to ignore. According to the reporting, it looks like Will is the one who accidentally makes contact with Eric while trying to defend himself, even though RJ is the one who escalated the situation into a physical confrontation in the first place. And yet, according to what's being described, Will is the one who's going to end up blamed, which, if you've watched this family operate for any length of time, might not surprise you at all. There's a pattern here worth naming honestly. The Forresters, according to the way this incident is being characterized, have a track record of being the ones who escalate to violence, and somehow it's rarely their own who end up carrying the consequences. That's not a small detail. That's the emotional center of gravity for the rest of this week. By Wednesday, the fallout from that bar fight is in full effect, and the framing around Will only intensifies. Eric, reportedly still shaken and in pain from being struck, has to sit down. Electra is described as kneeling beside him, checking on his condition and glaring, reportedly, at Will. And here's where this incident stops being just a bar scuffle and starts becoming a turning point for an entire relationship. Because according to the emotional trajectory being described, this may be the moment Electra fully stops trusting Will, the moment she starts believing everything Eric and Ridge have apparently been saying about him being dangerous, except, and this is worth sitting with, that framing appears to ignore the fact that Will didn't start this. He was defending himself against RJ in a fight RJ initiated, and Eric put himself directly in the middle of a conflict that wasn't his to break up. Wrong place, wrong time, arguably wrong instinct, but not Will's fault by any fair reading of what's being reported. Meanwhile, RJ, the person who actually escalated this into physical violence, is reportedly positioning himself as someone taking a stand for his family. It's a reframing that, if accurate, deserves real scrutiny. Would it really be shocking if the Forresters decided to call the police on Will over this, despite the fact that the incident was, by every account given, caused by RJ in the first place? That's not an unreasonable question to ask, and it's exactly the kind of contradiction that keeps viewers leaning forward, wanting to know whether the truth is ever going to come out cleanly, or whether Will is simply going to absorb the blame the way it sounds like he always has. Thursday shifts the tension into a different arena entirely, moving from physical conflict to a much more personal, emotionally charged confrontation among the women at the center of this saga. Katie and Brooke, with Donna caught in the middle, reportedly attempt something like peacemaking, though given everything simmering beneath the surface, that effort doesn't appear to go particularly smoothly. The Forresters, for their part, reportedly draw a hard line about Electra and Will, making it unmistakably clear that the two of them are not to be together, that Will isn't even supposed to be near her. Given that Will didn't instigate the very incident being used to justify this line, that's a decision worth questioning rather than simply accepting at face value. And then there's Brooke. According to reports, over at the Forrester mansion, standing next to Ridge, Brooke is ranting at Katie, apparently still furious, apparently still convinced that Katie wanted this entire war between the families. Donna, meanwhile, is described as clutching a visibly disheveled Eric, trying to hold things together. But here's where the contradictions really start piling up, and where you have to ask what's actually going on with Brooke Logan right now. Because, according to reports, this is a woman who, not long before this, reportedly slapped Katie, went after her aggressively, and nearly had to be physically restrained from escalating further at Hope's launch event, an altercation that was apparently only interrupted when her own daughter walked in. Add to that the fact that Ridge reportedly struck Bill around this same period, and you start to see a family whose default response to conflict has increasingly become physical rather than verbal. So when Brooke shows up raging at Katie again this week, the question isn't just what set her off this time. It's why does this keep happening, and why does everyone around her seem to keep making room for it? Because make no mistake, reports suggest Brooke's behavior lately has been erratic enough that people around her have started raising real concerns. Ridge himself reportedly mentioned prior to this that Brooke wasn't going to be back for a while, apparently referencing time she'd need away, possibly connected to a wellness facility. And yet here she is this week, reportedly watching the live stream disaster, reportedly not looking relaxed, reportedly right back in the thick of the conflict the moment Eric gets hurt. Did that incident pull her out of whatever recovery period she was supposed to be observing? Was she ever really committed to stepping back in the first place? Reports don't fully answer that, and that ambiguity is exactly the kind of loose thread this show tends to leave dangling on purpose. Meanwhile, in the middle of all this family combustion, Katie is reportedly trying to do the one thing nobody else in this saga seems interested in doing: taking accountability. She tells Eric she's genuinely sorry for what happened to him, and by most accounts that sympathy appears sincere, but it's worth being precise about what she should and shouldn't be apologizing for. Katie didn't cause this. RJ instigated the fight. Eric chose to step between two men decades younger than him, a decision that, however well-intentioned, wasn't a particularly wise one. None of that is Katie's fault, and yet she's the one reportedly working overtime to smooth things over, while Brooke is reportedly still raging, and RJ is reportedly being cast as some kind of family protector. Which brings us to Friday, and the moment this entire week has arguably been building toward. Will Eric actually tell the truth? According to what's being reported, Friday's episode centers on a conversation between Eric and Katie about their shared history, and there's a real opportunity here, one that fans following this story are reportedly hoping gets taken. Because for months now, according to the way this situation has been described, Eric has apparently been lying, or at minimum, allowing a false narrative to persist about how he ended up working with Katie in the first place. The truth, as reports lay it out, is that Eric insisted on that arrangement himself. He wasn't tricked. He wasn't manipulated. He made that choice, and the fallout from it, everything that's cascaded from that decision through Ridge's reaction, through the live stream meltdown, through the war between these two fashion houses, traces back to a story Eric has apparently been unwilling to own honestly. Will he actually say it? Will he stand in front of Ridge and Brooke and admit that he was the one who wanted this, rather than continuing to let everyone believe he was somehow victimized into it? That's the real emotional cliffhanger heading into the end of this week, and it's a bigger question than it might first appear, because so much of the animosity fueling this entire family war is built on a foundation that, according to reports, simply isn't true. And reports suggest Katie isn't going to let this slide quietly if Eric continues avoiding the truth. Described as visibly upset at the Forrester mansion by Friday, Katie appears to be reaching a breaking point, and there's a real possibility she finally calls Eric out directly, especially given how nasty his live stream comments about her were, and especially if he continues compounding those comments with more dishonesty about their shared history. There's one more thread worth pulling on before we close this out, because it's easy to lose track of Will amid everything happening around him, but his story this week might be the most quietly sympathetic one in the entire saga. By the end of the week, reports indicate Dylan steps up to support Will as he processes the fallout from an incident he didn't start, and by most readings of the situation, shouldn't be blamed for. Meanwhile, Electra, who reportedly turned cold toward Will in the immediate aftermath of Eric getting hurt, is described as having treated him poorly since. Which raises a genuinely interesting question heading into whatever comes next. Is this the moment Will finally recognizes that Electra isn't the person worth fighting for, worth defending, worth absorbing blame for? Sometimes it takes watching someone side against you unfairly to see a relationship clearly for the first time. So where does that leave Port? Well, where does that leave Los Angeles and the Forrester and Logan families heading into the next stretch of episodes? Eric still hasn't told the full truth about how his working relationship with Katie began, and that lie is sitting like a live wire underneath every conversation happening at that mansion. Brooke's behavior continues raising real questions about her stability, questions that go beyond a single bad week and point toward a pattern nobody in her orbit seems willing to directly confront. Bill's gleeful reaction to Eric's public meltdown reveals just how transactional his concern for Katie's feelings might actually be, using her pain as a talking point while framing the whole disaster as a win for their side. And Will, the person who arguably did the least wrong in this entire chain of events, from the accidental contact with Eric to the fallout with Electra, is the one walking away carrying the most blame. Fans reacting to all of this online have reportedly been split, with some siding firmly with Katie, arguing she's the only adult in this entire saga behaving with any real integrity, and others pointing out that her restraint might be exactly what's letting Bill continue treating her hurt as a strategic asset rather than something that actually matters to him. Others are focused entirely on Brooke, debating openly whether her recent pattern of physical outbursts, the slap, the near altercation at Hope's launch, the raging at the mansion this week, represents a genuine crisis that the people around her are choosing to overlook rather than address, and plenty of viewers seem to be firmly in Will's corner, frustrated at watching a young man absorb blame for a fight he was dragged into by someone else's aggression. What's clear, even without knowing exactly how this all resolves, is that this week wasn't really about a fashion launch or a bar fight in isolation. It was about a family, several families really, whose default response to shame, embarrassment, and conflict increasingly seems to be aggression, followed immediately by deflection about who's actually responsible. Eric humiliates himself on a live stream and turns around to blame theft. RJ throws the first punch and ends up positioned as the protector. Brooke rages and lashes out and somehow keeps getting given more chances to calm down rather than being asked to account for the pattern. And through it all, Katie and Will, arguably the two people who've done the least to deserve the fallout landing on them, are the ones left holding the emotional weight of everyone else's choices. As we head into whatever comes next in this story, the real question isn't just whether Eric finally tells the truth to Ridge and Brooke. It's whether anyone in this family is capable of taking real accountability without immediately reaching for blame, deflection, or, increasingly, their fists. Will Brooke's behavior finally get addressed head-on, or will it keep getting quietly excused as just another chaotic week? Will Electra realize what reports suggest many viewers already have, that Will was never the danger in that bar, and that the people telling her otherwise have their own reasons for wanting her to believe it? And will Katie ever get an apology that isn't wrapped in someone else's self-interest? If this show has taught its audience anything over the decades, it's that the truth in this world rarely arrives quickly, and it almost never arrives without another explosion first. So if you want to see how this all shakes out, stick around because this Los Angeles fashion war is nowhere near finished. Let us know in the comments who you think is really to blame for what happened at that bar, and we'll see you in the next one.